Welcome everyone to AAC Fostering Emergent Literacy.
There are your materials for the training up here as well as on the bit.ly. This presentation, we're going to focus exclusively on Saltillo products. This is a Saltillo presentation, and we're not really going to talk about other similar or related products. Financially, I am an employee and an employee owner of PRC Saltillo. We are a 100% employee owned company, and so financially I'm compensated by PRC Saltillo as part of my salary. And non-financially, I am an ASHA member. I'm a speech language pathologist. I'm an ASHA SIG 12 member. ASHA SIG 12 is the special interest group primarily focusing on AAC. A little bit about me. I am a speech language pathologist currently living in New York City. So I do apologize. There's actually a car alarm going on outside my window right now. Hopefully you guys can't hear it. But that's just sort of part of living in the city. I am going to turn my camera off just because with the videos and the bandwidth, it makes it a little bit easier, but I wanted to say hello, make sure you saw that I was here with you today. So, So today, I'm lucky enough to have Camber with me in the chat as well. She's here to help answer questions that I won't get to or that any ones that I miss. So feel free to reach out to us in the chat. She's here to help me since there are 103 of you, which I'm thrilled to have you all join me, but I may miss things in the chat. So Camber's here to help, which is fantastic. And what the two of us are going to go over is we're looking at we're going to start with typical literacy development and review what that looks like. We'll then use this foundation to help us understand what we can do to help foster literacy for those who are using AAC. Armed with this, we're going to look at 4 specific things that we can do to support literacy. So these include providing access to the AAC system, engaging in shared reading, making reading available, and engaging in early writing. And then we'll sort of wrap up by talking about how teaching letters, letter sounds, and phonological awareness can benefit in the context of using AAC. So as I mentioned, I'm really going to want you to chat in a lot here. So we're going to start by tapping into what you already know about literacy. So I'm going to have you plop into the chat what literacy is or what it means to you. This might be a formal definition or just some keywords that come to mind. So we can hear from you. Molly says phonological awareness. Victoria says the ability to read and write. Yeah, that's literacy for sure. Understanding, reading and writing. Comprehension is a great keyword here. Understanding, that's right. Oh, Samantha, being able to use reading and writing functionally. I like that a lot. We often talk about functional and what's sort of functional for our students. Lots of reading and writing. Lorraine says a multifaceted way of communicating. That's certainly true. Yep, lots of reading and writing, which is certainly important. So the good news is you're all correct. Literacy is so many different things, most of which you've talked about here. As an SLP, literacy has always had a special place in my heart. One of the reasons for that is just the incredible value that it brings. It's central to so much of what we do, and teaching literacy is really one of the most empowering and functional things we can do for somebody. Somebody in the chat mentioned sort of functional understanding and how we recently have a lot of focus put on what's functional, and literacy is certainly one of the most functional things we can teach our students. Without the ability to read and write, we wouldn't be able to learn or run our houses or shop or connect with others or be a productive citizen and vote or work or engage in social media, text, or just even participate in today's session. So since literacy gives people the opportunity to engage in their environment as well as to increase others' perceptions of them. It's reducing barriers that can be imposed on others. Literacy can be a big barrier if you're not able to read and write, and having literacy skills really facilitates inclusion across many environments. That's right, Carol put into the chat that literacy equals independence, and I love that because it is very, very true. It's important to know how dependent we can become if we don't have those literacy skills. So I am going to ask you to bear with me and close your eyes and sort of imagine what your day would be like if you couldn't read or write, and think about all the different ways that it would impact your life. You might not be able to work or help your family, or eat out at a restaurant, take money out from an ATM. So I would love for you to chat in. How would that make you feel? How would not being able to read or write impact your life and make you feel? Frustrated, says Brooke. Lost, a couple of you both said lost. And isolated, a few of you have chosen that word too. Unmotivated, I love that, Kelly. We often hear from some people about, oh, they're not motivated. My student isn't very motivated or interested in anything. And that is certainly, it's not very motivating if everything is really tough. Disconnected is one that Amanda shared. Yeah, sad. A few of you have used the word sad. Uninformed. Yeah, Ashton shared that the entire previous life would look different. It would be void of experiences. And we're really going to talk a lot about experiential learning today and how important these experiences are, and dependent on others. Yep, or a burden to others, even some of you have shared. Yeah. So if we can't read, we certainly would feel all of these difficult emotions. And what we know is that 90% of people who use AAC enter adulthood without acquiring functional literacy skills. Now, the term functional literacy, as employed by the UNESCO Institute for Statistics in this study, was looking at a level of reading, writing, and calculation skills sufficient to function in the particular community in which the individual lives. So what does this mean? That by the time someone using AAC enters adulthood, he or she, or 90% of these individuals, do not have the skills sufficient to participate in society. And often people might say they haven't taught literacy to these AAC users because they're working on functional skills or early language skills. But it certainly seems to me like participating in society is pretty functional. Research shows that individuals with a wide range of disabilities, ages, and AAC systems can learn to read and write without access to speech. So we want to keep that in mind as we're moving forward. We want to make sure that we give our AAC users the same opportunities with literacy that we want for ourselves and our families. So when we're setting the stage, we're going to place a big emphasis on a developmental approach because it's important to understand the long journey of acquiring all of these rich skills that will prepare our learners how to read and write. So first, we know that reading, writing, and literacy, it's not happening in a vacuum. Copenhaver and colleagues remind us that reading, writing, speaking, including augmented communicating, and listening abilities develop concurrently and interrelatedly rather than sequentially. And I really like this image on the right because it really shows how connected everything is. We're understanding, we're speaking, we're reading, and we're writing, and language and literacy is sort of in the middle of all of that. Connected to each piece and sort of growing and changing as we're learning more. So second, we know that literacy is a continuum that starts at birth or even perhaps before. You might think about a mom who's reading to her baby in utero, or at least just reading her to-do list out loud, and the baby we know is able to hear her. And since we know that this literacy is a continuum, we want to imagine that there are different stages or milestones along the continuum. The focus for our training today is going to be in the first stage, often known as pre-reading or early literacy. CHAL has 6 stages of reading development that offers a simple framework to show the skills that a child will acquire in those first 6 years of life. We certainly wouldn't expect a 1-year-old to retell a story or print his or her own name. So we want to think about sort of how they get to that part. How do they ramp up there? So you'll see on your slide there, from 6 months to 6 years, you sort of will go across this continuum from pretending to read to all the way up to understanding words are printed and have meaning. So this first video that we're going to watch offers a bit of a bird's eye view into that early literacy stage. It shows 3 different participants, the youngest, which is 2 months old, and the oldest, which is 5.
Especially now when
He's not muted. Let me see if I can mute everybody.
give you what you need.
Let's see. Great, thanks for that help, Camber. We just want to make sure everybody can hear. Okay, so here we have our first video of our 3 engaging in their early reading.
It's crying. Why is he crying? Because he spilled his cake. Or, I mean, cereal. Now what happened? He's in the car and he's having it. No. She's measuring herself. And nothing.
What do you say at the end of the book?
You should read it again.
So this is it's a very sweet little video, and I would love to hear from you guys what we're going to start with the baby, and how is the baby participating in literacy development? So chat in, what's this baby learning, and how are they participating in literacy development? Yep, Kim says the baby is listening to language. Yeah, auditory input and hearing the voices, hearing the words. Yeah, Molly says you might be able to see his brother. It looks, especially in this paused frame, they seem to sort of be looking down at each other and enjoying that time together. Yeah, a lot of listening and really enjoying that reading is a family activity, right? It's pleasant. We're having a good time. We're engaging with our brother, and we're happy. We're sharing attention. Awesome. So what about the 3-year-old? What skills was our 3-year-old participant showing? Yep, Lori says she's looking from left to right. She's pretending to read. She's sequencing her events and storytelling. Exactly, Kristen says she's handling the book. She's turning the pages. She's got the book oriented correctly, right? She's starting sort of at the beginning of the book and she turns the pages all the way to the end. That's right. She's got some definite concepts of print there. And finally, what about our 5-year-old? He's running the show. What's he doing? Lori, that's really nice. He's encouraging. Yep, he's being encouraging to his sister who's learning how to read. Brooke mentions that he's providing sophisticated language. That's right. He's adding into sort of what his sister's saying. He's interpreting the book and the pictures. That's right. And he was prompted by his mom at the end, what do you say at the end of the book? And he said, the end. So he's sort of showing he knows some of those story concepts as well. That's right. And commenting with his sister. Oops. So the third thing that we know about literacy is that it might not look like traditional reading and writing, especially for our emergent communicators here in the beginning. So if emergent literacy doesn't always look like traditional reading and writing, what does it look like? We're going to take a look at these short clips of two different 3-year-olds who are in the middle of that pre-reading or sort of early literacy stage. So we're going to start with this one. It's pretty short. I'm going to have you chat in. What is she doing? Yep. We have Brooke says she's looking at the print. She's flipping through the book. She's turning the pages. She's manipulating the pages and looking at the pictures. She's got the book oriented correctly. She's learning how to handle the book. Molly says reading for fun. I like that. She's entertaining herself with the book. She's sort of showing herself that books can be her own entertainment. She's enjoying it. Yeah, she looks pretty happy. So now I want to sort of challenge you all to think that if this behavior was done by a 14-year-old instead of a 3-year-old, would we call it the same thing? Or would we maybe call it something else? Yep, Molly kind of got what I was pointing at, which is that if an older student was exploring a book this way, we might be tempted to call it stimming. And that's why I like this video so much, is that this is a natural part of early reading, is she's exploring the book, she's feeling the book, she's trying to figure out what it looks like. And so we need to remember that early readers can be any age. And so when we're looking at some of the behaviors around books of our older students, we really want to encourage you to think about these, some of these exploration and some of this exploration as something that really is part of the natural development, and that she's just flipping through the pages. So let's take a look at our other.
Zoe, what did you write? You write it. Oh, wow, good job. What else did you write?
So that's just a short clip, but what is she doing in this video? What kind of skills is she showing off? Yeah, writing strokes. She's got some scribbles up and down. She's scribbling, making early marks on the paper. Yeah, Ashton's right. She's reading her own writing back to the audience, right? She said, I write an O, and pointed at her scribble very, very confidently. Lauren says she's showing that marks have a purpose, which is absolutely true, and that her marks represent her thoughts. She's really understanding that showing that print has a meaning, and so she wrote an O, and she's very proud. And so again, I'm going to challenge you to think about if we had an 8-year-old who was doing the same thing, who just sort of made some scribbles on a page. What would we say about that person's literacy skills? Would we give them credit for sort of early literacy skills and learning these first steps? Or would we say, oh, she just scribbles on the page, she doesn't have any literacy skills yet? we really want to keep in mind that scribbling is an early part of this journey, and so we want to make sure that our older students who are still in these early stages are being given credit for the early skills that they're developing. Oops, there we go. So Copenhaver and colleagues have said it's through, literacy is learned through active engagement with their world, right? It's learned through observation, interaction, and with people, and also with the reading materials. And so somebody had mentioned earlier that if they weren't literate or they didn't have literacy skills, it would really make them feel pretty isolated. And that's because reading is an active environment, it's an active engagement, and it's really important to sort of see in both with others and with the books around us. So the final point I'm going to make about emergent literacy is that it really is fostered through positive and meaningful activities. So somebody earlier described the 9-month-old reading the book as sort of sitting with a caregiver, maybe sort of like this guy cuddled up and piled on top of a mountain of books that they've read through. Copenhaver again indicates that the functions of literacy are as integral to literacy as learning the form. So again, we're thinking about the function of literacy, and those sort of engagement and positive interactions that we have are just as important as learning the letters and how to shape them. So we're going to watch another short video of a 3-year-old who's working on writing, and we want to think about what her goal is here.
You're writing a recipe? What are you going to make?
Some peaches.
Some peaches?
Look, I made some pears.
And you made some pears? We need some pears for our recipe?
Yeah.
Write the things we need on there, all the ingredients.
So she's starting to write her very first recipe, and she knows I need to list out my ingredients, I need to think about what's needed, and likely she's learned that because that's what her parents have been modeling for her, and she's excited to engage with them as well. Okay, so you may have felt like that was a little bit of overkill, but it's really important that we appreciate and understand how typical literacy develops so that we can understand how to foster it with someone who's using AAC. So now we're going to take a look at how literacy grows and figure out how we might start to foster literacy for those individuals who do use AAC. So we talked about the continuum of literacy, and so we're going to talk about this as moving from emerging to conventional to advanced. So by working backwards here, the advanced skills may include things like reading with fluency, reading comprehension, and reading for learning. So reading a variety of topics, different genres, and different types of literature. Whereas conventional literacy skills might include certain book vocabulary, blending of sight words, decoding and encoding, while emergent literacy skills are what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to take a look at some considerations for determining whether or not someone falls in that emerging category. I'm going to have you think about someone with whom either you work or you mentioned if you're a parent, your child, and you can think about that specific person, and we're going to ask ourselves these 4 questions. Does he or she know all of the letters? Is he or she actively engaged in shared reading? Does he or she have a consistent means of communication or interaction? Does he or she understand that writing involves letters and words? So if you answered yes to 3 or more of these questions, your student's probably ready for conventional literacy. That's not the focus of this training today, so there may be another person you could keep in mind. But if you answered no to one or more of these, then that person with whom you're working is in the emergent literacy stage. And that is a good person to sort of keep in mind as we're moving forward today. So we're going to take a look at 4 concrete steps to start fostering emergent literacy with AAC. The first one of those is providing access to the AAC system. People need to be active participants in the literacy process. If they cannot communicate in some way, they cannot be an active participant. So what the AAC system looks like may be different, but you need something in order to be an active participant. I would love for you guys to chat in the type of AAC system that the person with whom you're working is using. Okay, we've a few people with touch chat, a few people with Nova chats, some people using LAMP as well, or iPads, core boards, yeah, low tech, accent devices, low tech books, iGaze, a few people using PEX, awesome. Some people on Unity, lots of people with touch chat, Nova chats. Awesome. Laura says a variety from low tech to robust, so that's fantastic. There are lots of different options for AAC systems, but of course what we are most worried about is it's not enough to provide some AAC. We want to make sure that whichever system they're using is robust, and so that they're offering core vocabulary in addition to the sort of items that they maybe want to be requesting. I would love to hear in the chat what you guys understand core to be. So if you could talk a little bit about core in the chat to make sure we're all on the same page. Molly says most frequently used words. That's a great way to put it. Common words used across all context. Yep, 80% of spoken words, that's right. Critical vocabulary, says Juliet. I like that use of critical. It is really critical. High frequency, Ashley calls them flexible words. I like to use that myself. Functional words. Yeah, so you guys are all on it. You've pretty much gotten there. It's, yeah, Victoria says verbs, adjectives, pronouns, less likely nouns. And so that's certainly true. We want it to be robust, different types of words, words that we can use flexibly throughout our day, that are used with high frequency, words I like to often sort of call them words that you get the most bang for your buck. You're able to use them a lot, the same word over and over again. And core is so important because we know that it makes up the majority of our language. Somebody had cited in the chat that it was 80%, and this is my favorite, the Banerjee study, where they mic'd up children in a preschool classroom, and they recorded language samplers from toddlers who were in a couple of different sort of play and snack time environments. And what they found were that 96% of all the total words used by the toddlers in the study included this small set of only 26 core words. And this, for me, was crucial in my understanding of early literacy and early language. And that if we can give an early communicator access to just these 26 core words, that they're going to be communicating pretty close to a level of the rest of their peers, right? And it's going to give them the flexibility to have a lot to say in a lot of different contexts. And so we want to make sure that we're giving our AAC users access to this core language, not only for their own language abilities, but also because it's going to impact their literacy. This core language lays the foundation for later learning. And so this 3-tier model for choosing vocabulary was created by Isabel Beck, who's a literacy expert who's specifically focused on vocabulary choices in literacy. But the focus of her research was around typical language delayed kids not kids who used AAC. And so as a result, in her work, she made a comment that all kids come into school knowing Tier 1 words, so we need to focus our instruction on Tier 2. And a lot of academic curriculum words in this Tier 2 have become the focus of classroom curriculums. And while that is really appropriate for some of our learners, all kids don't come into school knowing those Tier 1 core words. Our AAC users often do not have access or the ability to fluently use these Tier 1 core words. And so we need to focus on teaching Tier 1 core words before they move on to learning Tier 2. Often an analogy we might want to use is that you don't teach algebra before kids know the numbers or know basic addition and subtraction. We want to make sure we give our students a strong foundation so that they can be successful. In the example sort of on the slide, it's the idea that we wouldn't teach a child the word humid if they haven't yet learned the words wet or hot or dry or cold. We want to make sure they have a strong understanding of those basics, and then we can give them opportunities to move up their vocabulary as well. So again, we want to think about our systems, our core words, and our core words have a large overlap with sight words. So as we're thinking about literacy and working on our literacy, both core words and sight words are made up of a small subset of words that are used much of the time for talking, reading, and writing. In our systems, for example, in WordPower 60 Basic, which is the screenshot you see on the bottom of the screen, compared to the Dolch Pre-Primer first 40 words, if you compare them, about 50% of them, the ones that are highlighted in blue on the bottom, are all on the home page. So there's a lot of overlap between these core words that we're giving early access to and the core and the first sort of sight words that we're going to teach in literacy. So how is core represented in Saltillo chat software on Nova Chats and in the Touch Chat app? It's important to understand how it's represented on the AA system we're using. So we're going to take a peek at how core is represented in the chat software. So again, this is a 96 location manual communication board. You have a copy of it in your handouts, or it's also in that bit.ly that Camber shared in the chat. This is an expanded version of the homepage of WordPower 60 Basic, and then it has the addition of some more frequently used words. What you can see is that on the left, you've got your question words in this sort of pale purple: what, when, where, how, who, why. You've got pronouns on the far left in yellow: I, me, my, mine, it, you, and your. And then helping verbs in this sort of very pale green on the left. Those are really important as we're working on our literacy. Those are words we see a lot in written text. Our big green section in the middle, all of our action words. And then some adjectives in the sort of top right, and then our what we call small words, again on the side in blue. Another set of words that are really helpful as we're working on our literacy. And now, while this isn't a dynamic screen the same way that we would use one of our devices, it still has access to tons of core words and lots of words we can be modeling while we're working. I often recommend using a core word board like this in addition to if you're using a low-tech sort of picture choices system. So since those low-tech choices of pictures often just have items or what we would call fringe words, and so you can supplement that with a low-tech board like this so that you can be giving access to core words in addition to access to those words that they may want to be requesting. Okay. So we're going to just take a second and think about, is the child or the student who you're sort of thinking about today, do they have access to core language? If yes, Do we know how it's organized? Hopefully. And then if no, how can you add core to his or her system? So I just shared one way that I like to do that. If I have a kiddo who's using sort of more of a requesting-based picture system, I make sure to give them access to a core board as well. There are lots of other ways you can give access to more robust languages as well, and you can always supplement with low tech. Okay, so I am going to stop here for questions. I know that Camber has been answering some questions in the chat and has put the bit.ly back in there. I see that as well. Does anybody have any questions before we sort of keep moving on to our other steps in fostering literacy? So anything I've missed, Camber?
Nope, I think we're doing good.
All right, great. We're going to keep on moving then. Okay, so the next step in fostering emergent literacy is to engage in shared reading.
Catherine, you did just get one question before you.
Oh, great. Perfect. So should we use the low-tech board while we're working alongside with someone who has high-tech? That's a great question. And the first thing I would say is that we do always want to make sure that we have a low-tech backup of anybody's high-tech system. High-tech systems are fantastic and offer so much, but there's always a chance that something happens and it gets dropped in the bathtub or needs to get sent in for a repair or something. So we always want to make sure that everybody has backup systems of their high-tech devices. And then depending on your learner, you can model or demonstrate on their device, or I've had plenty of kiddos who prefer that I, as the speech pathologist, would model on the low-tech version and that they would get to say it on their own high-tech version. That's certainly an option. I think if they're open to you modeling or demonstrating using their system, it's great because that way they can really see it directly on their screen and know what to do. But if they prefer for you to have your own system, that's great. I worked in a preschool where we had a mix of typically developing kiddos and kiddos who had language and motor needs, and so we actually had all of our typically developing kids had their own low-tech board so that they felt included, and they liked to have it because the more modeling and the more low-tech you have around, the better. So you certainly can use as much low-tech as possible. So it's a great question. And then I see, would you use core words with lower tech devices such as GoTalk versus objects to request? That's a great question, Christy. So I love having core words involved. So if you're using a lower tech system like a GoTalk, I think a good mix is probably the best bet. And just like anything, each person is their own learner, and I can't give too much advice for someone I don't know, but I would say that if you can incorporate core words early, your learner's going to be better off. We want to make sure that they have access to core because it is going to help them with their literacy and it is going to help them with their general language development. So early on, being able to introduce core words that are really powerful, like, in and out and off and on, those can be really great words to practice in addition to some of your specific items. I hope that answers your question. All right, and those are great. If you have questions, we'll have a couple more opportunities between essentially each of these sections. At the end of it, I will have a moment to stop for questions. So if you have any questions, you can either save them for that time or you can just pop them into the chat and Camber will help me with them when it comes time to questions as well, because we want to make sure that you get the most out of being here. So we want to make sure all your questions are answered. Okay. So now we're talking about shared reading. So what is shared reading? Shared reading is exactly what it sounds like. It's just a time for sharing a story and reading together, as well as a time for teaching beginning reading concepts in a safe and fun environment. So what does shared reading look like? Again, I'm gonna ask you all to chat in how you would describe what shared reading looks like, because I've got a hunch that you already know what it looks like. looking at a book together, reading aloud. Marcia says enjoying a story together, which I certainly like. Engaging together with print, making sounds or commenting on fun things. I like that a lot. Reading together. Yeah, lots of just being together, right? It's interactive. We're asking questions. We're making comments. The book is available in the environment as well. Fantastic. So you guys, once again, you've got it. And on this side, we have some. When this question was asked to a group of parents, they found that they had all the answers themselves. So when asked, this is how parents described sort of what they did when they were reading with their child, and this is exactly all of the elements of shared reading: using a lively voice, having freedom with the book and the pages. The child gets to hold the book, they get to turn the pages on their own pace. Using actions and gestures, pausing to allow the child to fill in the blank. We all really know how to make it a positive experience, and that's really what shared reading is all about. So now that we know what it looks like, why do we do it? There are so many benefits of shared reading, just some of which are on the slide. Including increasing and developing new vocabulary, learning to predict how a story will progress, understanding that illustrations can help construct the meaning, and using structural and visual cues to help them aid in the reading process, learning about recognizing letters and sounds in the context of the words of the story. There's so much to learn from shared reading. It's a really important thing. And since now that we think about it, how often do we read to children who are verbal versus children who use AAC? We read to children who are verbal all the time. We read to them so much because we know about all these wonderful benefits for our children, our students, and our friends. But unless a child who uses AAC really loves being read to, how often are we reading with these children? And if we do, how active are they in the process? We want to think about, if we know about all the benefits of shared reading and being an active participant in reading, what are our AAC users being involved in, but also what are they missing out on, and how can we make sure that we're not accidentally sacrificing any of these great opportunities? So now we're going to take a look at what it might look like to use shared reading with somebody who's using an AAC device.
Here, Mommy wants to read you a book. Can we read our book? Can we read? Can we read a book? Can we read a book? Oh, what's this book about, Tobugs? Is it about animals? Oh, here, look. Oh, I see a kitten, a little kitty cat, and a dog. That's right, look. Dog. That's a doggy. Dog. That's a doggy. Frog. A frog. Fish. And a fish. Where's the fish? Here. Where's the fish? I don't know. Oh. Fish. There it is. There it is, the fishy. I see a fish. Petting. Oh, pet. Can you pet the fish? Zoe, pet. Pet. Can you pet the fish? Pet. Oh, yeah, pet that. How about pet the fish? Pet. Pet. Pet the fish, yeah. Fish. Fish. Hamster. Oh, fish. Fish. Pet fish. Hamster. Fish. 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 That's right. Fish. Cat. Where's the cat? Cat. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. I see. Cat. I see a cat. You know what that kitty cat says? Listen. The kitty cat says, cat. Says. The kitty cat says, meow, meow. That's right, meow. That's the kitty cat. Owl. Oh, an owl. Owl. What does the owl say? Cat. Well, the cat says meow, but listen, the owl says. Owl. Owl says. Owl. 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 Owl says. Animal sound. Owl says. Owl. Whoops. The owl says. Hoot hoot. That's right. Who says meow? Is the kitty cat? Does the cat say meow? Back to the beginning. Should we read more? More. You want to read more? More. Okay, let's read more book. Let's read more book. We're going to turn the page. Turn the page. More, turn the page. I see a zebra. I see a zebra. I see an elephant. You turn the page. Turn the page. Good job. Zoe, turn the page, huh? Turn the page. Turn the page. Read. Read. That's right. Let's read the penguin. I will read it. There's a penguin. I see butterfly. Should I turn the page? Nail. Whoops. Turn the page. Turn the page. Okay. Oh, there's that fishy. All done. Are we all done? Oh.
No.
Done. All done. Oh, you want more?
More.
More reading?
Yeah.
More reading? Okay. We find our animals?
So I like to pause right here because I do think this is helpful to see that in that time, a total of 48 words were activated on the device by the communication partner during about 5 minutes of spontaneous shared book reading, including animal names, animal sounds, and then 9 different core words. And I really appreciate, Nathalie, you shared in the chat that it's difficult reading with your son right now because he's not engaged. And we're going to talk about different ways to get our early readers engaged in books here in the next couple slides. So let's keep moving. So what's different about shared reading compared to how we described it earlier? As we read to the child expecting, without really expecting him or her to say anything, we want to read and model on the device in that same modality. Mom was not only making sure that the book was available, but she also had the device right there. She was touching it as she was reading to the child, and the child was touching the device as well, but everything else was the same. They were in a cozy spot on the floor. They were sitting side by side. They were having a positive interaction with the book, and it was very child-led. It was not a Q&A session to see what words she could use or what she understood. Lately, some of the researchers have started calling it demonstrating instead of modeling, since demonstrating can be a little bit more clear that we're really just showing our kiddos how to use the device, and we're trying to show them different words they might want to use, and then that way they can learn it and decide what words they want to use. So we want to be modeling without expectation or demonstrating words they might want to use. Okay, let's see. So here we're going to watch another example of shared reading with AAC. This is a video of a mom, Kim, who's reading to her son using an AAC app on an iPad. And so we want to watch for things that she does that's the same that you would do with a child that's verbal, and then watch some of the things that might be different.
Here, I hear a lion roaring in my ear. Lion, what do? Here, I hear a hippopotamus snorting in my ear. Hippopotamus, what do? Here, I hear a flamingo fluting in my ear. Flamingo, what do? What do? Here, I hear a zebra braying in my ear. Zebra, what do? What do? Here, I hear a boa constrictor hissing in my ear. Boa constrictor, what do? We can keep it. Here, I hear an elephant trumpeting in my ear. Elephant, what do? Here, I hear a leopard snarling in my ear. Leopard, what do? Here, I hear a peacock yelping in my ear. Peacock, what do? What do? Here, I hear a walrus bellowing in my ear. Walrus, what do? Here, I hear a zookeeper whistling in my ear. Zookeeper, what do? What do? Here, I hear children growling like a polar bear, roaring like a lion, snorting like a hippopotamus, fluting like a flamingo, braying like a zebra, hissing like a boa constrictor, trumpeting like an elephant, snarling like a leopard, yelping like a peacock, bellowing like a walrus. That's what I hear.
So yes, I see some positive comments about Kim in the chat. She does have a fantastic Facebook page that's recommended, and she does a fantastic job of waiting and letting her son fill in the same way you would be reading. Many of us have read Brown Bear, or Polar Bear, and that element of waiting and the repetitiveness can be such a great way to get engagement and interest, and really know how he's supposed to respond. So, is this something that we've all done before? And hopefully we've made our point as to sort of why we think this shared reading is so important. Often we will compare learning how to use a device with something you may be more familiar with, like learning how to sign. This is some advice from babyhearing.org, where they're helping parents read to their young children who sign. And so if you look at this last sentence, you can, when you're sharing a book, keep the book visible and your signs visible. And if you sign while you read, you can really see what happens. And I like that sweet little clip, just because it really shows how much joy and joint attention this little guy is sharing. He's deaf and he's using sign language, but he's looking up at his caregiver's recording. He's making the signs when he sees the pictures of the things he knows how to sign in the book. And what stage of literacy is this 16-month-old in? Is he in the emergent literacy group with us? I certainly think that he is. So what are the purposes of modeling on the AAC system without expectation during shared reading? It's important because it's exposing our children to vocabulary, it has a positive interaction, we're learning how to model, and we're building confidence. This building confidence piece is really important. We want our young AAC users to feel like they're readers, the same as lots of other young kids who say, oh, what do you like to do? And they say, oh, I love to read. I'm a reader. We want our AAC users to have that same opportunity. It's really important. So we're going to do a quick little practice. So in your resources, there's a simple book that's called What Can We Do? And it just has some pictures of the kids doing different things, and then a simple core word on the bottom. So I'm going to use this page as an example. So here you have the two kids painting, they're smiling, and the word make is on the page as a word you could model. And I'm going to ask you to chat in some other words that you see on our core board that you might also model. Love, like, look, happy, put, pretty, go, paint, no, tell, see, stop, play, turn, do, on. Yeah, there are lots and lots of core words you can be modeling on this page. Love is one I particularly, and happy, they just both look so happy to be painting. There are lots of different words we can model here. And so I like to just sort of stop and have us all practice to see that, you know, really any word works. We've got lots of different words on this this core board, and because they're core words, we really can, you know, make them work in all kinds of different contexts, and we can talk about sort of why we might want to choose those words. And so on. And so one thing you might want to use to help you as you're reading together is to use the emulation software such as Chat Editor to create visual supports of the words you want to model. And so to be very clear, the purpose of this is for you as the adult or for any other adults in your child's life as a communication partner, so they know which words to model and potentially where to find them. You can put the words in the book, like in this picture from Brown Bear, where you see they've put in what and then do and I and see, or you can just create a single page with all the keywords on it, sort of like a quick guide or a cheat sheet that is available to you. Again, this is really for the adults so that, you know, we're remembering, we're demonstrating all the different words that we can be using without expectation. So this isn't a test for our kiddos. We're requiring them to say what, do, and I and see on each of these pages. We're just giving the adults some extra support to know, oh, I could model what or do or I or see. These are all words on either my core board or on my AAC system, but I could be modeling. We're not going to go through how you are able to do that, but there is this handout using button capture and Chat Editor that will explain to you how you do it if you're not familiar with it. It's a really helpful tool to help build understanding and make all of the adults who are reading with your student or your child comfortable with modeling and knowing what types of core words to use and when. So one of my favorite SLPs and AAC heroes, Gail Van Tatenhove, has always talked a lot about repetition with variety. And so the idea that you want to repeat your activity, but the variety is just change one thing. So maybe you read the same book for the same reason, but with different people. You practice reading it with your paraprofessional, your parent, your peer, your teacher, your SLP. It's the same book and you have the same target words. Or maybe you're reading with the same person, but you're looking in the same book for different reasons. You're modeling different words, you're reading to find different things or different letters. Or maybe it's the same person with the same reason, but they're different books. And making your own books or choosing your child favorites books or using curriculum-based books that you need to read are really important. You can take all kinds of different books and make them easy to sort of walk through and understand together. So when we're selecting appropriate books, we really want them to be engaging and interesting. We really need to be thinking about the child's interest. We want it to be fun. We want reading to be something that they want to be doing. We also want it to be age appropriate and age respectful. We want to be giving books that are something that they are interested in, is similar to what their peers are doing. We want to look for books with some repetition. This makes it easier when you're modeling and to give lots of practice for the same words. You can remember the video that we just watched with Polar Bear, what do you hear? Being able to repeat that you and having that be the word that we pause and that we are seeing if the child wants to fill in. Predictability really builds understanding. So we want it to be predictable and repetitive. And then it might be easier to get started with books that have more limited text per page. We know that sometimes getting to turn the page can be very motivating. So if there's limited text on the page, you get to turn the page more, and you get to feel accomplished when you're finished reading your book. So there are some more ideas, on this next slide. That have resources for books. The Tar Heel Reader, if you're not familiar, it has some really awesome free books that are downloadable as PowerPoints. PowerPoints can be really accessible. You can switch pages of PowerPoints with a switch. So if you have a kiddo who's not able to turn the pages themselves, that might be a really great direction to look in. Again, repetitive books, they're just some links that have different repetitive good books as well as ways to create your own books. And we're going to talk a lot more about created books here in a little bit when we're talking about making books more accessible. Once you can model naturally, there are lots of other similar strategies and techniques. There are some that are here in this table where you can think a lot about the overlap of what's recommended that what you're doing, such as introducing a book topic. So you can do a think aloud, you can relate to their experiences, you can ask questions that are open-ended, use predictions, what do we think, and respond to lots of different prompts. So when we're thinking about making predictions and introducing the book, we maybe want to think about doing a picture walk. So walking through the pictures and making some predictions about what we think the words might say, and to make a guess on what might happen. You can use things like a think aloud. I wonder what this book is about. Let's look at the cover and some of the pages and make a guess. That can be more explicit, right? You could say, let's look at it before we read it and take a guess. You can look through the cover. You can talk about what you see. You can make some guesses. You can write them down, and then you can try to relate it to the child's experiences. When I first heard about picture walks, I was afraid that it might sort of be spoiling the book, right? Why would we look through the book first to talk about what it's about and then read the book? But we know that kids learn through repetition and through predictability. And so being able to walk through the book and talk about what we see and what we think we might be reading about, and then to read the book, gives them that background knowledge that they really would love to have, so that they can feel like they know what's going on and they're familiar with the story, and they like to sort of know what's relatable. Again, there are several research-based strategies and other programs for engaging in shared reading using AAC. We don't have time to go through each of these today, but they're in your handout as a reference. And so we just wanted to make sure that you were familiar with them, and that if you wanted to delve deeper into any of them, you can. That includes this, which is the Tell Me program, which is a research-supported reading and writing lesson. Sometimes people just like to know, what's somebody who sort of printed it all out and done it all for me. It's all conveniently in a book. This is a really great system for that. Okay, does anybody have a question as we keep moving on? All right, I'm going to keep on moving. So the next step we're going to talk about in fostering emergent literacy is making reading available. So we know that children with disabilities often have fewer opportunities to practice than their peers, and if they do get to practice, that they tend to be more passive participants in reading. Since we know that reading volume is the prime contributor to vocabulary growth, we then know that individuals who use AAC are getting less reading volume and thus less opportunities to grow their vocabulary. You miss 100% of the shots that you don't take, so we need to start making reading available to these children. Some of the ways that we can prioritize reading is by creating a reading space. Maybe there's somewhere specific in the classroom that's always just dedicated for reading. You can build in time for reading in your schedule. Maybe the paraprofessional reads to the child one-to-one each morning during a certain time. It's before bed with your parent. Maybe the SLP starts each session with a book. We really want to make sure that there's time for reading. And then finally, we want to teach the child how to request to be read to, or request to look at books on their own. It's really important that they're able to advocate for themselves and say, I want to read, or let's read a book, or read to me. One of the ways that we want to create accessible books is we want them to be physically accessible. So that may mean increasing the text size so that somebody with limited vision is able to see it. It may mean that we're minimizing the text by pasting over the text that's in the book with slightly less text. We can adapt it for page turning. Here's a picture where you can see the little pads have been added to the corner of each of the board book to just give a little bit of space. That makes it a lot easier to turn the page because you don't have to get the pages apart. And so that can just make a world of difference in being able to independently flip through a book. You can increase the durability. Maybe you need to take a book that's not a board book and cut it and put it into a board book to make it a little bit more durable. Or you can create squishy books, which we'll talk about. Again, there are lots of electronic sources as well that you can use to help get students involved in the creation of books online, or help them read and flip through books online. One of my favorite things to do is to create or provide interesting books. It's so easy now with smartphones. It's pretty accessible to be able to take pictures of children in their environment. You want to include the child's picture, include something about them. You might want to relate it to a current theme or a holiday, or just consider things that they really love. If this little guy really loves his dog and pushing his very good-spirited dog around and all manners of things, so it's a book of places that we go, and we're targeting we go inside, we go to the park, we go in the truck, we go in the stroller. There's so much you can talk about in a way that can really get people and young readers interested in reading and enjoying what they're reading. It can be a lot easier to be engaged and interested when they're people who you know or people who you recognize. Remnant books are another really meaningful way to get kids who maybe aren't interested in traditional books as a little bit more interested in book reading. So you can use a mini photo album, or sometimes people call it a little brag book, and insert remnants from a really fun day and then add text to the pages. Again, there's an explanation of how to do this in your handouts. And then here is a picture of a really simple remnant book. It's one about Easter. And so you just use actual items, put it on the construction paper, put them in a Ziploc bag, and then tape the Ziploc bags together to make a book. And so this way you can sort of read back through and have remnants of the day in the memory. And you can say, we found an Easter basket, we ate candy. You can choose the things that were really exciting and have access. So that's a really fun way to get kids who maybe aren't as interested in traditional books engaged in reading books that are more appropriate or more interesting for them. And finally, another fun book modification is squishy books. So as the name implies, you're using squishy materials such as Play-Doh, putty, or slime to add sensory interest to a book. So this can help capture children's interest and promote participation in shared reading. And then children's own comments or simple phrases adults come up with can be written on either sticky notes and attached to the page as text or just underneath the squishy item. Again, we're not going to go through how to make one of those, but that's included in your resources so that you can see how you might want to use a squishy book with one of your readers. Again, I will ask if anybody has any questions before I move on. All right, we're going to keep on. Oop. Do I have a picture to show of a squishy book? I do not have one, but I can certainly get one to you. I'll write your name down, Angela. And I believe we'll have your email. So if you are, you said wonderful, great. So you're consenting to me sending you a picture. I will follow up with a squishy book picture. Perfect. All right, so we're going to keep moving on. And so now we're going to talk about engaging early writing. So first of all, what does early writing look like? As we're talking about it, I do want you to think about that student I asked you to keep in mind and where they may be on this continuum. And so that continuum looks like exploring writing tools. This can be mouthing, could be holding, then turn to random scribbling or scribbling with letter-like forms, drawing simple pictures that might have a meaning to the child, and then beginning to use print to make signs or labels, using letter-like forms, using written words, often spelling their own name is a word that they start with, starting to spell phonetically, conventionally, and then the process of learning that writing is just talk that's been written down. This link here at the bottom, Early Writing and Why Squiggles Are Important, is a really great resource as well. It's a great article that sort of outlines why squiggles are so important. And again, it's important that we keep a developmental perspective in mind. We wouldn't expect a 9-month-old or a 2-year-old to be doing these sorts of things yet. But we might expect a 12-year-old to do them. However, if a 12-year-old is mouthing writing utensils and scribbling, we're questioning if it's appropriate. We want to really meet our children where they are and help them build from one step to the next and think about the developmental options that they have and really try to get them independent. So why is early writing so important for literacy development? Because it builds confidence, it fosters interest in letters, reading, and writing, and it really does lay the foundation for reading. Imagine if your children or students who may have missed this early writing stage and how they may not be interested in reading or interested in writing because they've skipped this stage and now they're being asked to do something that is much more difficult for them. So we really want to start with early writing and build that confidence and interest in learning to write. When we're thinking about typical literacy development, why do children learn to write? It's because they see other people do it. They really want to convey that meaning. It's important to note also that what writing looks like today, while it still does include a pen and paper, it also comes in the form of texting on a phone or typing on the computer. And so we need to keep all forms of writing in mind. What we know is that written language activities should never be withheld until the child has mastered walking or talking. Remember when we said that reading, writing, talking, and listening, they all happen together. But we know that that doesn't happen for children who use AAC. So when we're thinking about fostering emergent literacy, we need to be engaging them in early writing activities and keeping in mind that developmental perspective. One way that children first learn to read is often by writing. For struggling children, their own writing is sometimes the first thing that they're able to read. So, getting started. They're going to need something to write on, they need to have something to write with, and they need to have something to write about. Similarly to how children with AAC are read to less often, children with AAC are exposed to writing less frequently. So what if your child can't hold a writing utensil? Use an alternative pencil. Developed by Gretchen Hanser at the Center for Literacy and Disability Studies, alternative pencils are defined as anything that provides a student with access to all 26 letters of the alphabet. There are tons of amazing full-day trainings about alternative pencils and implementation of them. So we're just going to sort of touch the surface on it today and get you thinking about it. But alternative pencils are appropriate for anybody who can't hold a traditional writing material or manipulate a standard keyboard. Writing with alternative pencils allows the students with significant disabilities to develop the beginning writing skills by supporting them to go through the same developmental writing phases that typically developing students do. So what could you do or use as an alternative pencil with your child or student? There are lots of great ideas. You could use magnetic letters, you can use alphabet stamps, you can use letter stickers, you can use flip charts, a keyboard in their AAC system, a computer keyboard, a talking word processor, eye gaze frames with the alphabet. These are all great options. This link also has some more information. Yep, somebody chatted in a foam letter puzzle. That's a fantastic one. Yeah, Selena has commented that she likes to use the Paint or the Notes app on the iPad, and they use their finger to write on the iPad, and then they discuss what they drew. That's fantastic. That's another great way to talk about drawing and letters, and that's a fantastic option. Okay, so we're gonna take a look at this video from the it's an alternative pencil video on YouTube. There are tons of great YouTube videos that have children using alternative pencil, and I want you to watch in this video what his teacher is doing, and I want you to think about if you have or had a student who might be at a similar stage of literacy development, and watch all the letters and the alphabet and how he's given the opportunity to write. And his teacher's asking him to choose the letter he wants, whether he knows that it's a letter or not. And then she identifies the name, the sound, and matches it to start to assign meaning.
Keep writing. What else do you want to see? More koalas. Okay. Good job, Owen. Remember, let's keep it on. Oh, that's a new page. Okay. Well, that kid didn't find out. Cheers. Oh. I'm worried to put some of these letters back so you can use them. See? You're probably going to find out. Oh, Oh, wow, Owen. Good job. Okay, Owen, are you all done writing? One more cue. You're all done.
So he's sort of all done. But what I really love about that video is it shows you that he's learning how to write and he's getting experience with these letters in a way that if you had shown me this video even maybe 3 or 4 years ago and you had asked me what he was doing, I don't know if I could have told you that this was a literacy activity, right? He's engaging with these letters and it's really important in his early literacy development, and it doesn't look like traditional writing, but it certainly is. So it's a great video to watch. So next we're gonna jump forward and talk about saving the message as a writing tool. So this child is in the emergent stage of literacy. Her name is Kendall, and she's 10 years old in this video. She's had her Nova Chat for several years, and at the end of each of her speech sessions, she engages in a writing activity to share with mom what she did in therapy that day.
Okay, press the photo that you want to replace. Okay. You like it? Good job. Okay, now we're ready to write our sentence. What do you want to tell your mom and dad about what we did today? We read that book. Uh-huh. All right, build your sentence. Hold on, you just erased I. Do you want I at the beginning of your sentence? No? The toilet? You want to talk about with the cat in the toilet? Yeah? Do you want to say the cat got in the toilet? Yeah. Okay. All right, find your animal. Cat. And what the cat do? Well, hold on. Let's have a word before toilets. Go back home. The cat. And it goes in the toilet, right? And went in? Okay, now you can go find your toilet. Yeah. Let's go back to groups. That's okay. All right, we're going to go to hygiene because we do all that stuff in the bathroom. And then toilets up at the top. Toilet. All right, put on your period and let's go save your sentence. Toilet. Okay. Save your sentence, so go back to groups. Oh, but did it match that picture? Let's try it again. Save your message again. It's okay. We'll just have it in there twice. Good. There you go. I think your mom will like that sentence. Good job, Kendall. Okay, all done. Yep, you're all done. Good job.
So there you can see that she's saving her work, and her SLP is doing a great job of helping her and prompting her, but really making sure she's writing what she wants. Well, she had started with I, and then she deleted it. She said, "Oh, did you want to Start your sentence with the I. Oh, no, okay. And then sort of moved on from that. And I think that that's a lesson that I try to take with me, because I often will think I know what my student's trying to say, and I really don't. So it's really important to make sure that we're making sure that as our students are writing, that they're able to really write what they want to write, even if it's about the toilet. That's what they're passionate about. So here you can see, this is when Kendall gets home from school, this is how mom knows where to go and help Kendall tell her mom her therapy news. And again, the photo, the picture of her cat craft was over on the left, and then in the box on the right is where you can save your phrase in there. So we're going to talk a little bit more about the save message feature before moving on. It's important to note, save message, it's just a tool. So how you use it is really where the teaching and the learning happens. This is a different client example. It's a screenshot from the device of a 5-year-old boy. His team was wanting to incorporate his writing goals into his IEP. And so there's a video online that demonstrates this in action, and the link is included in your handout. But you can also download the written step-by-step instruction guide from the bit.ly, and it allows you to sort of see why you might want to help your students save their writing. Another modification from Save Message is this Save Document button that you can find on the keyboard page. This is just a quick way to save a child's writing samples. It links into a saved writing page, and that's another way you can sort of save the writing from the speech display bar for your students. The second tool that the SLP used in the video we watched with Kendall is called the Take Photo button action. And so that's what allowed Kendall to take the picture of what she wanted to talk about, which was her cat craft. This is a different example of a 5-year-old boy who, with the help of his communication partner, took a picture of a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle coloring sheet using the Take Photo button action, and then use Save Message feature to write about it. Again, your handout includes a link to a video of how to set this up. It's just another great way that you can save somebody's writing and help them take what they're speaking and turn it into writing. So now I'm going to have you chat in, now that we've established that you can find an alternative pencil. The next step is creating some opportunities. So I would love to hear you chat in any ideas that you might want to try with your students, either with alternative pencils or saving the buttons, saving the messages, anything you're interested in trying. Molly said she wants to try saving messages. Yep. Start using save messages to share about the school. Yeah, Kim says retelling a field trip for those who didn't attend. That's a really great option. You can make a remnant book about the field trip, or you can save some messages about it, or use the photos. Yep, they're great. You can save them. All right. So you guys are coming up with some great opportunities for writing. And so here are some other ones to add to your list, right? You can be signing in and out of school. You can be making a Christmas or a birthday list, signing your name on thank you cards, writing text for a remnant book, signing up for daily jobs. There are lots of different ways that you can include writing. So once you have all this writing happening, you can fine-tune it by providing instructional feedback. And you can think about this as a way of shaping their writing into more meaningful ideas. So giving your students instruction through feedback after their writing. You can think about these 2 earlier videos we watched. The things that the mom and the teacher were saying were instructional feedback, like, wow, you wrote an O. I can write an O too, just like you. You want to listen to the communication partners around older children who are still in the early literacy stages, because my guess is you're not going to actually hear this kind of feedback as a child is doing something like mouthing an object or scribbling on paper or drawing a simple shape. We do this with typical literacy development, and we need to be doing it with children using AAC too. It's really important that we're giving that types of feedback. If somebody like the guy who was experimenting with his letter magnets, he needs to hear the same sort of things like, oh, you're using the letter Q. Those sorts of things are really important. So next we're going to talk, switch gears a little bit and talk about a more structured approach that provides students with lots of opportunities to write and gives you lots of opportunities to give instructional feedback. Gretchen Hanser, who I've already mentioned, developed this idea called predictable chart writing based on work by Cunningham, Hall, and Williams. Predictable chart writing is a fun and easy shared writing activity that supports emergent and conventional writers and readers. It's a way of providing some structure while allowing students to generate their own ideas. So included in the bit.ly is a PowerPoint slide handout with additional detailed information about predictable chart writing. My goal today is just to provide you with an introduction for it, and so you can get an idea and then delve deeper if you're interested. So we're going to start with an overview. There are 5 steps of predictable chart writing. In step 1, the teacher and the students work together to compose a chart, with each student contributing at least one idea. In step 2, the class practices reading the chart and looking at specific elements. In step 3, students are given the sentence strip with their contribution printed on it, and they cut the sentence into individual words and then reassemble the words into a complete sentence. In step 4, students collaborate to create sentences during a game called Be the Sentence. And then in step 5, the class creates a book using sentences from the chart. Depending on the skills of the students, each step can be completed on a separate day, or several steps can be combined into a single session. It really depends on the time that you have. I would also say this is created for a classroom, but could easily be done in group therapy or just at home if you have siblings or parents or other family members who may want to play along. So we're going to do this using the chat, but the first step of predictable chart writing is to write the chart. So this starts by selecting a topic and then deciding on your sentence, frame, and your prompt. The topic can match whatever the class is currently using. For today, we're just going to keep things simple and use the topic of favorite colors. So now for a sentence prompt, which is very similar to a sentence starter, we may want to choose one that will encourage use of core words as an answer, so adjectives or verbs, and one that can be answered using the child's AAC system. So I'm going to choose I like, because that's something that you can use lots of different things to answer. I'm going to ask you, a few of you, to add into the chat your favorite color and answer to the sentence starter of I like. Great, I see a couple people putting in, yep, green, pink, purple, I like green. Fantastic. Another important part of this is that while we may use symbols to help the students answer, we will only be writing words on the chart. Since this is a literacy activity, we're focused on the print. So thank you guys for adding into our chart. We've got lots of different options. The second step in predictable chart writing is to reread the chart, to talk about it, and then to analyze it for a few carefully selected text elements. The primary goal of this step is to help students focus on specific aspects of the text. So depending on a student's abilities, the goals of this step may be different. For students who are emergent readers and writers, the focus might just be on print awareness. So this includes teaching students that print carries meaning and developing concepts of sentences, words, and letters. Conventional readers and writers will have repeated practice reading high-frequency words in the context of these sentences. And students who do not yet recognize letters and words will have repeated opportunities to start developing these understandings in the context of meaningful print-based interactions. We start this step by rereading the chart while emphasizing the repetition of the sentence frame and modeling what a fluent reading of the text sounds like. Next, we read the chart again while encouraging the students to read along. Many teachers have found that their students are more engaged if they clap or chant or rap the words while reading, and while others may use a single message voice output device to read the repeated frame. There are lots of different ways while you're rereading the chart you can use to make it interesting. In step 3, the students are working with sentence strips. So for this step, the adults create 2 sentence strips for each student with their individual sentence. You give the student one of his or her sentence strips and you keep the other. You ask the student to read the sentence, providing support as needed, and then you ask the student to cut his or her sentence into individual words. If you have students who are not yet able to cut the sentence independently, you can run your finger along the sentence strip and you can have the students indicate by gesturing, vocalizing, hitting a switch, or saying there, anything like that on their device to tell you where to cut. It's important to remember we want to avoid drawing lines, making dots, or otherwise cueing students regarding where they should cut. The whole point of cutting the sentence into individual words is to help the students develop the concept of the words and begin to recognize the place where one word ends and another one begins. We want to keep tape very handy for this. Students might cut in the middle of the words. So when you compare your sentence strip to the student's sentence strip, you can talk about the spaces in between words, tape the student's strip back together, and then ask them to cut the sentence into individual words again. This might take several attempts to get it right, but we don't want to be frustrated. We want to give students the time they need to figure it out by doing it. And then after the sentence is cut into its individual words, we want to ask the students to arrange their words and recreate their sentence. Once they've finished, they read the words in the order the student arranged them. So in the example, if the student had arranged the words blue like I would ask the student, does that sound right? I like blue. And then read the sentence as it should appear, and then rearrange them, and then reread them in the order the student had created them, blue like I. And so we might want to show them the completed sentence and say, oh, does your sentence look like mine? We would help them compare and contrast the words in his or her effort to make the words in the appropriate order on the sentence strip. After comparing and contrasting, we remove the model. We ask them to try it again. It's important that we remove the sentence strip since we don't want it to become just a copying activity. We want to keep trying and use each effort as a chance to give the student feedback and provide some experience in attending to word order. The fourth step of predictable chart writing is to play a game called Be the Sentence. During this activity, you write the words from each sentence on a full-size sheet of paper. It's only necessary to write the words from the sentence frame once. Make sure to print each word with a large, thick marker in front that's large enough for the students to see in front of the class. You can pass the words out from a single sentence and have the students who have words come to the front of the room and construct the sentence. Encourage the students in the audience to guide the other students as they rearrange themselves to create the sentence. Each time the group of students indicates that their sentence is ready, you read the sentence the way the group has arranged it, and then you can compare their sentence to the actual sentence on the chart and work with the students to recognize the left to right orientation and the specific order of words while emphasizing what sounds right or what makes sense. For students who use AAC, you can be using a single message switch to produce the word that he or she will be using during the game, or you can make sure that they know where the words are on their AAC device so that they can access those. So the final step of predictable chart writing is to make a class book. First, you're going to want to let your students select an image that reflects their sentences. This can be done using magazines, photographs, images from the internet. It's a really important step when making the book because it provides students with the opportunity to show ownership and make their own connection to the writing. So for example, your image of friendship might not be the image that the student had in mind. So we then want to help our students glue the words from the sentence strips onto the page. You want them to write their sentence and then type it or add it to the page. You might also want to work with students to make the book using Tar Heel Reader or on another computer or internet-based book making tool. Step 5 is really important as part of predictable chart writing because it results in a permanent record of a student's work. Often written work is on a chart or on a computer or on a whiteboard, and it doesn't end up getting saved. So having the book provides an artifact that the students can return to and remember over and over again. The books have additional meaning to the students because they reflect individual students' work, but also the class as a whole. Often these predictable chart writing books become a classroom favorite. So who has a question? Does anybody have any questions about predictable chart writing? Okay, not seeing any in the chat, so I'm gonna move on to our last section. So we're nearing the end of our presentation today, but I did want to spend just a few minutes about talking about exploring letters, letter sounds, phonological awareness. Please note, this is where we start to sort of merge into the conventional literacy stage. So we're really only scratching the surface with this since it's really the beginning of a more conventional literacy topic. So there have been several studies that have investigated the effects of instruction on acquisition of letter sound correspondences by individuals who have complex communication needs. What these found were that individuals of various ages and a range of disabilities using AAC can indeed acquire letter sound correspondence. The length to acquire this knowledge, of course, varies depending on a range of different internal and external factors, but it is possible so that we can acquire those. Based on the studies, there were also some suggestions to consider when working with the population. The first was to teach one letter sound at a time, and the second was to teach the letter sounds first and the letter names later. I'm curious in the chat, can you guys think about why that may be? Yep, so there's some different options here. So it helps with encoding and decoding, and that's absolutely true. And letter names can confuse what the sound is, i.e. D for W. That's right. So we also don't have a one-to-one sound letter ratio, which can be really confusing. So if a child looks at a word and recalls its letter name, not the sound, he may have more difficulty decoding the word. The letter names can be taught later, but if we're going to initially focus, we should initially be focusing on the sound, since that will help with the decoding. You guys all did a great job. So there's also a proposed following order for introducing those letters and the sounds. And so when you're looking at, this is the order from left to right of the sounds that they recommend using in order. If anybody wants to chat in what they notice about this. Yep, they're certainly not in ABC order. Lower frequency sounds are at the end. It does that Heather mentions that they seem developmentally easier to produce. That's certainly right. And the most frequently occurring letters that they're going to need to be decoding are first. So that's exactly right. You got pretty much all of it. It's also, nobody mentioned this, but they are all lowercase, which is recommended since lowercase is more frequent in text, and that they're more frequently occurring letters are taught first. They're separating the sounds that are visually or orally similar. And then you want to teach short vowels before longs, because words with short vowels tend to follow the decoding rules. Yep, so letters like P and Q are pretty far apart. P is one we use a lot, so it's much earlier in the list, and then Q is actually the very last one. We're keeping them pretty far apart. Okay, so how do you teach it? Luckily, we teach it the same way we teach other children how to learn letter sounds, through repetition and exposure with meaningful activities. Similarly to how you need an alternative pencil for children who might not be able to hold a pencil, you may need an alternate way for a child to make sounds if he or she is not able to do so. One possible option for this is the use of a phonics keyboard. Here you'll see a screenshot of one of the phonics keyboards in the NovaChat system. There are also phonemic hand signs apps, or you can also use single message switches with a sound that might be appropriate. Here, this is the phonics keyboard, so you'll see the letter, and if you tap on it, so if you were to tap on the letter T, it would say t, t, or just t, and then if you tap on the letter C, it would say k, so that you can start to practice being able to say your phonics. Next, you need to have meaningful activities that provide the child with lots of opportunities to hear and say a sound. You typically start with the sound in isolation and then move to the initial sound of words. So some examples of activities include sound boxes, sound songs, sound hunts, sound games. You could even combine a sound hunt with a remnant book concept like we talked about earlier and make a sound book. Or you could use predictable chart writing to make a sound book or find target sounds in your writing. There are lots of resources online for this. Here you can see a picture of a sound box that is available that's pre-made for you. And then here you'll see, for kiddos who are using alternative access, you may need to involve some switch activated toys or single message buttons or customized pages. Here's an activity of an example from Dr. Pamela Hart, where the child will walk the dog to different letters and words that start with the given sound. So it says walk the dog to the first sound in ball, walk the dog to a word that rhymes with cat, walk the dog to a word that means the opposite of small. So you've got lots of options there, and then you hit the switch and you walk the dog to those sounds. That can be really powerful and exciting, so that's a great opportunity to involve phonics in our activities. So again, blending, we're going to model blending using the phonics keyboard. So you're going to say something like, listen to each sound, see if you can guess which word I'm saying. And then you point to the word. So you would say, at, pointing to each letter as you say the sound, and then helping them make an appropriate choice in their AAC system, repeating it with other options, working on lots of opportunities to work on blending, segmenting as well. You can be doing it with the device. You can say something like, look at these words, let's touch each one and hear what it sounds like. So you can, start segmenting that way. You can say things like, oh, that's right, bat starts with the B sound. Let's go find bat in your vocabulary. Again, blending and segmenting, we're not going to talk much about, since that's the sort of start of more advanced literacy skills, but we've got lots of information about conventional literacy and additional presentations that will go into more detail about that. So this is my last stop for questions. We have about 5 minutes left before we're out of time, so I wanted to make sure we did have a little bit of time for questions. So I would love to hear if you have any questions about what I've said today, or anything else you'd like me to clarify or go back to. Just scrolling up in the chat to see if there are any questions that I missed. Nathalie, is this common knowledge? Do SLPs in public schools know about it? I'm not sure what the "it" is that you're referring to. Could you give me a little bit more information? In general, AAC students in literacy. So yeah, so most SLPs should be familiar with general literacy ideas, but if you have a specific SLP and you need assistance, I would recommend reaching out to your local consultant. They're a really great resource for helping any SLPs who might be new to AAC and literacy and might need some see some information. So if you wanted to reach out to your consultant, Camber might be able to put the consultant link in the chat, so that you can put in your zip code and they'll connect you with your area consultant, and then they can make sure that your SLP has the information that they need. Perfect, thank you, Camber. Okay, Marcia, earlier you talked about putting symbols. In books using chat editor capture feature. I've done this on an adhesive printer paper, but the pictures rubbed off after a use or two. Any suggestions on what paper to use? So I typically recommend just printing it. I didn't have anything fancy, so I would just print it on a regular printer paper and then tape over it with like packing tape, because I found that sort of sealed it in and functioned almost sort of like laminating it. And so you could sort of tape over it with packing tape, and then it would be not only stuck on there, but it would be pretty sealed up. Yeah, but Selena mentioned the laminating them helps as well, which is another option. But if you don't have access to a laminator, I found that clear packing tape works almost just as well. Yep, Heather mentions page protectors as well. Those can be helpful. Are there other trainings on other levels of literacy for AAC users, for students who might already have some of these skills? Yes, so we have conventional literacy trainings. I don't know if we have an advanced literacy training, but we definitely have one for conventional literacy users, and Camber may be able to put that in the chat as well. I will just say, since we're coming up on our last couple of minutes, if you're ready to learn more, there's lots. We mentioned consultant support, but there's lots of video tutorials. And then those of you who want ASHA CEU credit, make sure that you complete your form. And put in our completion date, which is today, 5/5, and then make sure you email it to info@prentrom.com within the next 15 days to make sure that you get your CEU credit. It is now pretty much exactly 3 o'clock, so I appreciate you all for joining us. I'll stay on and answer a couple questions in the chat if there's anything new, otherwise I appreciate you all for coming, and I hope you enjoyed today. Please feel free to give me feedback on the feedback form. I always love to hear what I can do better for next time. Thank you all for coming. Yes, Laura, you will be emailed a certificate of completion about an hour after the course is over, so you should get it. You should get it today, and it'll give you your certificate of completion. It'll generate it through GoToTraining, so just keep an eye out for a GoToTraining email. Yep, so that's the letter of attendance or certificate of completion should be enough for that. If it's not, once you've gotten it, feel free to email this info@prentrom.com. That email they are our support team, and they are able to help you with anything that you'd like. Jamie, you don't need to fill out the course number, you just need to fill out any of the purple parts. So just the date, your name, your ASHA number, and your demographic information. They'll fill out the course number for you. Oh yes, and Camber mentions that the recording will be posted in about a week or so to the Saltillo website. Okay, thank you guys so much for attending. Doesn't look like there are any additional questions that I've missed. So
I love that training, Catherine. Nice job.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Thank you so much. And yeah, I'm going to stop the recording now, and we